Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what I've made here. It's an attempt at using TriggersBots with the new Saboteur Ascendancy. So TriggersBots are essentially just a ascendancy that gives you a couple of minions that take over the triggers of your build for you. So instead of you triggering stuff, they are going to trigger things, and they double it. So there's two of them. They take your triggers, they double it, they deal less damage, and then they usually utilize your triggers from their positioning. It really depends on the skills you're using as to what's going to end up happening, if they have to originate from their source, if they're still just going to cast at the enemy, etc. And the idea was to go Prismatic Burst, which is another one of the new things in this league. And then there's a new Reap MTX, and then I saw a Crucible passive for Ice Nova that triggered every time you Glacial Cascaded. So in the end, this build came together to have Frenzy triggering Prismatic Burst, which is doubled, so you get 2 Prismatic Bursts on every enemy hit from your TriggersBots, which then has Spell Slinger with Reap, which is just shitting Reaps all over the screen, which then has Glacial Cascade with Spell Slinger, which is using a Ice Nova at the end of every Glacial Cascade, but since the TriggersBots take over that, it's just causing Ice Novas to happen at the TriggersBot location. So hopefully you can kind of see all of that. The big red and blue explosion is TriggersBot, is Prismatic Burst being used by the TriggersBots. You have Glacial Cascades going everywhere when they explode. You have Ice Nova at the TriggersBots, and then of course there's a big shiny Reap happening all over the place. Currently that is with Spell Cascade, so there's 3 Reaps per cast, and they're being doubled, so there's 6 Reaps per cast. At this stage, I took out the Spell Cascade because I wasn't sure if it was really worth it. It wasn't giving me much additional clear, and I don't think it's great for single target in the end because there isn't a huge amount of overlap against most enemies. You really need the Awakened Spell Cascade, which is 17 Divines. So we're just using a single swiping of the Reap this time, and it's just hitting twice. All in all, it's also a low life build, and using Righteous Fire with a whole bunch of life regen stack. And yeah, all in all, I'm not quite sure what the build is yet still. I'm level 91 and I've been slowly upgrading it and testing stuff, and I'm still not really sure if it's a proper build. Like, it's gone through to tier 16 maps, it doesn't die too often, it's a bit weird, it's a bit uncomfortable at times, but it does do things. I guess the biggest problem it has is what most builds are going to have problems with right now, and that is Crucible, and it does feel a bit, punishing to face some enemies that can deal a whole bunch of damage and don't take a whole bunch of damage. So compared to the rest of the base game, everything feels pretty good, but the Crucible can feel a bit weird and like not too sure if the build's functioning as well as it should. So yeah, I'm still a bit confused about the build. I don't know what to really put forth as a product here, if it's a build you should copy or do or whatever. I think TriggersBots are great for the most part. They will definitely suck on some skills and lag behind and all that, but if you pick the right things, they can for sure just amplify the amount of fun you're having with all your skill vomit. And yeah, it's just a nice addition to Saboteur. The Reap itself is pretty cool in the MTX. It's definitely a bit more spell vomit as well. The Glacial Cascade and the Crucible is really cool, but I don't know if it's super useful unless you're really utilizing the end burst. So with this setup, the TriggersBots are always going to kind of like hug the enemy, and you're never going to be getting a final burst of your Cascade on enemies for the most part. So you're still getting the Ice Nova if they're near things, but it's not a huge Ice Nova. It is supported by the supports in your wand, which at the moment isn't a huge amount. All in all, yeah, having to fix regen as well was a bit tough, and then we're low life and petrified blood. And if you've watched me in the past, I really am not a huge fan of petrified blood. Like, it's something I have to do here to be low life and make the whole thing work, but you're always at half life and you always kind of feel like you're dying when the hits that petrify your blood come in. It always kind of feels like you're dying. It always feels a little uncomfortable. In any case, you can see it's a pretty fun looking build. I started playing it at level 30 and it was a blast ever since then. There's been some stuff I've had to work out and issues going through with damage and crucible and damage taken, but yeah, it is something, and it hasn't cost too much to get to this point. It's just a bit tough to put together. Really just not sure where to go with the recommendations and stuff if you should play it, because you may have a bad experience, but there's something in here. So far, let me show you how I've made the character up to this point. Here's the character at the moment, level 91, triggered more than my bots. Bots get triggered a lot. I get triggered even more by various things on stream. Either way, that's the character, Saboteur. Just real quick, the reason it looks like that is the Vault Pass MTX, which comes from this shit. It's the hat that changes your appearance of that. Been asked that a lot, as you could imagine. So it's that thing that doesn't do anything, just looks orange. Anyway, the build is basically revolved around, well, it's an accompaniment to the build, but Perfect Crime. So summons 2 level 20 trigger bots and 35% less damage with triggered spells. So you then have these 2 little bots, and every time you attack, as you can see, the Glacial Cascade is going to originate at them. They go where your cursor is, or where you're attacking specifically, and you can see the Ice Nova is going to happen at them. The Glacial Cascade happens where they start, and then they target a reap wherever your cursor is going to be, basically. Same with with the Prismatic Burst, which is a tough one to build around. It is a bit weird. I've had plenty of people say they started with it or tried to use it and it kind of sucked, and I'm kind of feeling that as well, but it is doing its part in the build too. It's just a big sort of undertaking, and I think it might need more specific build towards it. Perhaps. Not entirely sure still. Basically, every single time I attack with my Frenzy, once the Frenzy hits, it's going to unleash this Prismatic Burst. It's going to pick one of those elements based on your stat distribution, or you can eliminate some of those elements using jewels and then just funnel entirely into a specific element. Currently, you can actually hover these. You can see what is going to happen. So if we look at Prismatic Burst here, it has 58% chance to do the lightning damage because my int is that high, 25% chance to do the cold because that's my cold, that's my dex, about 200, and then 16% chance to do the fire. I'm scaling cold a lot more in this build, so cold is going to be the biggest hit, but the lightning hit can shock, the fire hit can do scorch, so I don't really want to eliminate any of those, and it's at the cost of a jewel socket. We'll see, maybe it's still going to be worth doing. Either way, at the moment it currently rotates, and it double hits with the trigger bots, so it's kind of hard to tell when you first pick it up or when you're first testing with it, but yes, every single time you hit the trigger bots, if you have trigger bots, you'll hit with 2 prismatic bursts instead of 1. So the idea is to have a 6 link there for the prismatic burst. So Frenzy into Hypothermia, Prismatic Burst, crit damage, crit strikes, and then LE penetration, since dealing all kinds of LE damage. You can get Shakos, so the hat with built-in sockets with Prismatic Burst, and they go up to level 35, and those have some nutty numbers. Like you can see mine does up to 2,000 cold base. At level 35, it's like up to 10,000 cold damage, and I think there might be some big stuff in that, but very expensive item. Anyway, that's Prismatic Burst. We then have a Spell Slinger setup for Reap. So Reap attached to, at the moment, Crit Strikes, Hypothermia, Spell Slinger. Spell Slinger reserves some of your mana and then lets you cast stuff. We then have a Spell Slinger setup in the wand at the moment, which is Spell Slinger, Cascade, added Cold, which is a shit gem. I'm going to get rid of it eventually. Same with the Crit Strikes, but It's kind of up to reservation. I then had to try and roll a wand that could do some sort of socketed stuff, and in this case it's currently cold pen and crit strike, so I might do something else in the end, might reroll the wand a bit more. So that basically makes it somewhat of a 5-link for this spell slinger, but the wand itself, and the reason I'm trying to do this thing with Cascade, is trigger level 20 Ice Nova, final burst of Cascade when you cast it, and that does work with the TriggersBots, and the Ice Nova is going to be applied to any gems on the wand. So it doesn't work with the built-in stuff. You'll be able to see it here. Currently it's got added cold attached to it. So yeah, it's just a kind of, at the moment, like 2-link. If we had a separate setup, like Spellslinger somewhere else, and then just put 3 supports here, it'd be a 4-link for Ice Nova, and it might be worth doing. I'm going to look into that as well. So that's what we've got going on at the moment. The wand otherwise has a bit of spell crit, and also I've managed to land Scorch on it. So we're scorching enemies for sometimes 10 to 15%. It's nothing too huge. There is another role I would probably rather, which is exposure to all elements, but we don't have that. All we really need is that, and then I turned the wand into a Warlord wand, re-rolled it to Shaper using Harvest, and now I've got a Shaper wand. And you can get better rolls than this, but currently this is what I got, and it's kind of working. Aside from that, running a Heat Shiver, not making the best use of the Heat Shiver, I don't think, for freeze and all that, but I think it is currently usable for extra fire damage. It won't work for Prismatic Burst, for example, because when Prismatic Burst chooses an element, it doesn't deal damage with other elements, so the cold and the fire won't hit at the same time. But it's okay for Reap, it's okay for Cascade and Ice Nova. It might not be the right play, but I had a look at one and thought, hey, I'll try building with that to begin with. So that's what we got. We do need a reservation enchant to be able to fit in more reservation, so either Spellslinger or Petrified Blood, something like that, or Purity of Fire. And then basically wanted to make this build because I got this shield from Rogue that has 3 max fire. I then tried to put some trees onto it to get even more max fire resist, and so this shield at the moment has 7 max fire resist, and that means that at the moment I'm at 90 max fire, and I could get more. Like, there's a lot available for max fire res, especially with these shields. Best case scenario, you can have a +3, +2 all res shield, and then add another 4 res, and have like effective purity. So a shield at the moment can give you like 11 max res to a single res if you go really hard with it. So yeah, Crucible can get pretty nutty in that regard. And then if you really want, you can do Melding of Flesh and do lots of fire into all of your other resists, and I considered that point of view when building this character, but I ended up just doing pure fire res and then getting suppress cap instead. So we're doing spell suppress as our secondary spell defense there. We got a lot of regen on pretty much all gear, so regen using Immortal Flesh for a lot of regen, some regen there, no regen there, none there either. None there, a little bit of regen there. So in the end, that yields me, with vitality as well, 1100 life regen a second, can easily sustain RF, and as you can see, even attack pretty comfortably and get a lot of regen back. I've got a little bit of leech as well, not there from the Watch Your Eye for vitality. So yeah, my sustain is pretty decent, and my defenses with this 2k life is Petrified Blood. We have the blind node over here, so things deal less damage. I'm running Arctic Armor. What else am I doing? Got some evasion through Flask and some of this, but it's not huge, so can't take a lot of hits, but I can definitely take some hits with the Petrified Blood with some of these defenses. As well as that, we have like Clockwork, things attack a bit slower, we've got better recovery, we deal damage there, we deal area damage there. Had to spec some reservation over here, had to spec some reservation there, had to anoint this reservation. To begin with, I was going this way and specking here, and I was going to anoint that. I'm still not sure what's correct. I'm really quite confused as to how I've built the character and whether or not I've made the correct choices and all that, but this is currently where we're at. I'm using Eldritch Battery just to help take care of mana cost, but for the most part, It's just to facilitate a hatred. My original plan was to basically be Eldritch Battery and have full ES all of the time, and then run this mastery here, 10% less physical damage taken while on full energy shield, and that does work a lot of the time. As you can see, I'm barely ever depleting when attacking, and especially when you're moving around, you're always going to be full ES. But if you're pressing hatred on Eldritch Battery every now and again, it's not going to be like full for, you know, a good portion of that. So I unspec'd that, but I really wanted that 10% less fizz. Didn't quite work out the way I built. Don't know what else to say there then. I'm a bit socket starved. If I had way more sockets, then I'd be able to move this setup somewhere else and all that. But got a Divergent Righteous Fire over here, running Mark on hit with Assassin Mark. That Reap setup we've already seen. We've got Frostblink, Purity of Fire. We've got Divine Blessing attached to Hatred. We've got Vitality, Arctic Armor, Arrogance, and Precision. Arctic Armor and the Vile Arctic Armor, it's okay. It's just something to reserve on my life so that I can go low life. The Vile I really haven't used much, and it's a bit situational for very specific situations, I think. But it is a button to press just in case. So that's currently the situation. I don't know what the DPS is. It's going to be really hard to calculate. It kills things, it maps, it can kind of do Crucible. Just the same as almost anything else, kind of. But, you know, we don't die too much. How many times have I died at this point? 18 while trying to build this thing. It has been a little bit difficult, but you can start this build at level 30, right when you pick up 31, when you pick up Spell Slinger. Which is what I did, and you start cascading, reaping, prismatic bursting, and I mean it's a good bit of fun, but I'm not sure how far it's going to take us, or if it's, you know, truly worth playing. Compare this to the Ice Shot character I just then played. If I log back on the Ice Shot and I start like doing a Crucible tree, just mapping tier 16, I am blasting so hard on that character for such little investment. It's quite insane. Whereas this one, it's not a huge amount of investment still at the moment, but it doesn't quite feel as worth the headache in putting together. I'll let you guys decide, be the judge. Maybe we'll have another video after another day or two of streaming this, and it might go the distance. It might do some real big things. I doubt it's going to be an uber build, but it's certainly a mapping build. It can do regular bosses, and we'll see if it's truly worthwhile. So with that, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.